We interrupt this program to bring you this urgent news. Camille Jones is not who we thought she was. It turns out, in fact, after all this time, she does not know how to make paper airplanes. We have video evidence of Camille struggling to make a paper airplane in 4K. She doesn't know where to fold the paper. She's trying to laugh it off, trying to keep up the charade, but it's crumbling right in front of her. She doesn't know what to do. She starts panicking, tries to hand it to Phoenix. Phoenix also doesn't know how to make paper airplanes, but she's not the one being judged tonight. Camille is.
Welcome. This is Always for the Culture podcast, presented by Elements and sponsored by the United Way. Today's guest is really special. Today's guest is Phoenix Brown, an interdisciplinary artist and someone I've known since the 4th grade. Literally like a decade, over a decade.
I mean, a little more than
A little more than a decade. But welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Good. I'm so glad we were able to get this interview scheduled and everything. Because you live in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I'm just in town for the holiday.
Yeah.
Just lined up.
How's Milwaukee treating you?
It's treating me pretty good. I feel like I'm finally getting a footing there because I've been out of school for like 3 years. You've probably been out of school for 3 years. I think we graduated the same year. But yeah, it feels like I'm an adult now. You know, not like a college student that's like struggling. So that's great.
Anyway, my question, how long have you been a Phoenix? And do you identify with the animal? Is it your spirit animal? Would you kill somebody? Is your favorite Harry Potter book Order of the Phoenix?
Wait. Number one, I actually don't read Harry Potter.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You're
All
uncultured.
right.
Betty White would not approve.
Betty White?
That's one of his top white people.
It's top 5 white people.
I think I'm finding out more about him than I am like understanding what you're up to. Like Betty White. Oh, there's so much to unpack there. I'm gonna just leave. Let me leave that.
I'm surprised I didn't ask you to name your top 5 white people.
I was going to just later.
Okay, all right. Off camera.
Okay.
No.
Oh my God.
Anyway, back to the interview. Milwaukee, what's your career like out there? Because you graduated from school in Milwaukee, but what's life been like for you since graduating?
Yeah, life's been pretty good. I won't lie and say like it's been like magical and everything just, it's not perfect because we graduated right before the pandemic.
We did.
So I had like a little bit of normalcy and then like everything blew up. So, but starting my career, like I went to art school with the thought of like, all right, I'm gonna come out of here with so many student loans. I need to be able to prepare myself to have some sort of career that goes alongside with like art making because, it's the 21st century. There's no such thing, or there is like artist collectives, but there aren't like guilds or people like, make art and live off of art. It's just not realistic anymore in our current landscape. So I think that's where my interest in art history kind of came from. And also I think back to like middle school, like being in like 6th grade with Miss Deaton. Like she was a good English teacher. Like surprisingly, like she was wild, but I need to stop talking on here.
Shout out Ms. D.
Right, cut that part out. Cut that.
All right, edit that.
But I think I kind of fell in love with writing. And then like I've always wrote short stories and stuff. So writing comes naturally. So now I'm able to apply that to like art writing and like researching and stuff. So I don't know. That's what I've been having like an identity revolution or what do you call it? Epiphany, I think. Yeah.
The epiphany, you mean to say it came from just sort of like navigating adulthood post-college?
I think so.
Do you think it was uniquely crafted considering the pandemic?
I think it allowed me access to explore myself in my writing, like because my first job out of school that was real. I shouldn't say that. Working at H&M was real. I used to work at H&M. That was my first job. But I worked at the Milwaukee Art Museum as a curatorial fellow. But because I was working from home, I had the ability to research what I want and then relax when I want and then come back to the writing and take breaks and stuff. And that kind of reminds me of like journalism because journalists are usually on their own and they write when it comes to them or if they have a deadline, they put it together. But I don't know, something about that was nice. It's kind of hard to reflect on it because I feel like I'm still like in it.
Yeah.
In it. But yeah, I figured out I'm more of a writer. Yeah.
That's beautiful then. And it definitely applies to the whole idea of you having to sit and contemplate the next steps of your life. I think writing is very much a practice in contemplation.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Thanks, Noah.
Thank you, audience.
Thank you, audience. But it's very much a practice in contemplation. And I know that, like you said, you're still in it, but do you feel like you've found some illuminating spots or parts of yourself? Have you rediscovered parts of yourself or discovered new parts of yourself?
I think I'm rediscovering parts of myself because now it's weird because like it's curatorial, but then there's art making, but I think they're joined together as one. They're one whole practice that they both inform one another. But I realized I've been coming back to sound and audio lately because I still have my guitars and stuff. So I think I've always had an interest in using music as a way to make art or like letting music influence the way I make objects and stuff. So I think I'm just going through like, somebody told me once when you're like an adult, you come back to the things that you were interested in as a kid. And I think that's what it is. So writing's coming back, guitar's coming back, but I think something about being out of school and not having somebody breathing down your neck and like watching you and critiquing you for like pursuing these things was very helpful. And I think that's part of the reason why I haven't gone to grad school yet either, because I would like to go, but like I just want time outside of that to figure out what I want to make and then go back. Yeah.
And considering you've been an artist your entire life, really, because you would be drawing and like you said, making music. We did guitar classes and everything since we were in elementary school.
You were like 12?
Yeah. That's elementary. That's it's grade school.
We met elementary school, but
yes, but you've been an artist for as long as you've been alive.
Yeah, basically.
But considering how art has been a part of your life for so long, in what other ways have you helped define your identity? Like, who is Phoenix outside of the artist?
Oh, that's really tricky because it's been so integrated. Like, I've never been able to separate myself from art making. I think I separated myself from music making, thinking that was like a whole nother human being. Wow. But that thing, music making is coming back into my art. So everything's like conjoined together. Like I cannot figure out who I am without these things. And I think that's something I'm still kind of grappling with. That's a really good question. I don't know.
Well, I think you answered it like just poignantly that this is you. Sure. There is no Phoenix outside of the artistry, outside of art making. But what does that look like as an interdisciplinary artist? You can join music, visual art, painting, drawing. Like, what does that look like?
Like, just in general, like how it comes out, or like,
I guess, yeah. Could you walk us through that? Like, just what art making using all those different mediums looks like for you when you're making art?
Yeah, it's tricky. I feel like art making takes a long time to make something that's really good. And if you accidentally, if you make something really good, it's usually on accident. You don't go out of your way to make something that slaps. Like, it's impossible. But I think it's like a lot of trial and error. I mean, I'm good at painting. That's what I do. But then adding like other elements like writing and music to it, it complicates things. And I have to step back and be more thoughtful and find other people to look up to. Making work with multiple facets. It's very tricky. It takes me a long time to do those things. I think I said that already. I think when I come across new ideas and finding a way to like add something else, like another dimension to my work, I often have to seek out other artists who do the same thing and see how they do it. And then you go back to the studio and you figure out like, oh, how does this apply to me? So that's why I like going to like museums and stuff, especially contemporary art center. This is like a jewel in the middle of. Yeah, it's a really nice jewel for like being in the Midwest, and we're not like any of the coastal cities for like art making. Like, that's a really good institution. So I think having that just basically in my parents' backyard, and then going there for like ideas, and then taking these ideas back to Wisconsin with me, like that's super helpful. So I think that's how I start. I can't really describe how it happens quite yet, but I'm sure when I'm like 35, I'll probably have an answer. Like I'm still like in it.
Exactly. But could you talk a little bit about how it feels, or if at any moment have you ever felt any self-doubt when it comes to exploring your artistry or how to step into art making?
I feel self-doubt all the time. I mean, it's like imposter syndrome. Like if you do like really well and then like you're like, I don't deserve this. Like why are these good things happening to me? I'm like, I'm not that great.
Right.
You know, but it's finding ways to talk yourself out of that is sometimes something I have trouble with sometimes. But I forgot the rest of the question.
No, I think you answered it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Yeah, you did. But what are some of those ways that you sort of cope with the imposter syndrome that you mentioned?
I talk to my friends. You know, it's really weird. Like you think like having a community is like, yeah, whatever. It's like implied that you have friends, but sometimes you're talking to your friends. They're like a really wonderful reflection of you, and they let you know like, no, you do deserve these things that happens to them, and we do the same thing for each other. Telling them like, no, you're real. You're a real artist. Like, quit playing.
Oh
You
God.
That's real though, because
Yeah.
it is hard to be an artist and to actually be trying to live off of the art that you make. Like you're actually living the artist's journey right now. You're not doing anything on the side to supplement like your income or to support your dreams. You're actually, this is your life. Like this is your bread and butter. So I could understand why you may feel at times like, whoa, what's happening? Like especially when you start to accumulate accolades.
Right,
And you're like,
yeah.
whoa, like, do I really deserve this? And you're like, I'm still learning. Like, I'm still in it.
Yeah,
like, I'm
you're
still trying to figure
in
it out.
Right, exactly.
No cap.
No cap.
But what was that like for you to finally decide this is what I want to do?
For making art wise, I just knew there was no other way. You know, like my parents, they really wanted me to stay in town, and they actually wanted me to go to Cincinnati State and then take my prereqs there and then transfer somewhere else. But I think the way I was making work, I felt like I was just kind of like ready to go. Like I think there was nothing else that school in particular could teach me. Not gonna put it down because it's a really good school up there, really good resources. But it wasn't what I was looking for.
Right.
So I think just being stubborn and just going for it and just trusting, like, you know, just trusting the universe to be like, I'm gonna get caught if I fall. Like you haven't failed necessarily yet. So I don't know. I'm just very like stubborn. I think that's I don't know. I keep like flying off from like the question.
No, you're doing great.
Okay, great.
This is what the people need to hear. You're stubborn. Well, what you call stubbornness has been like your driving force. But I'd like to think of it as just,
That's a strong
bravery.
will.
Yeah, strong will.
That's
yeah.
John Wick.
That's for
as an
real.
artist.
Wow.
That is.
That's really cool. Instead of stuff, maybe I'm just demonizing it, like thinking like what my stubbornness is bad because it makes other people around me feel like scared. I think that's what it was. My parents were
Right.
scared, but I wasn't. And I had to like
Exactly.
separate myself from their anxiety.
Exactly.
And then I trusted myself and everything kind of worked out.
Absolutely.
You know, things still hurt, but like, you know, I don't know. I feel like I'm just better off following my willpower.
Yes.
Willpower.
I think you've always known who you are and what you wanted to be.
Sure.
And I have a little bit of bias because we grew up together.
Yeah.
But I feel like that quality that you possess to, like, you can see what it is that you want, or you just understand yourself, even if you can't always articulate it that well. I think you've always had that power, that fire in you that says, oh no, this is what I want to do.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's beautiful. I commend you for that, because
thank
that
you.
fear could have held you back. I think a lot of people, especially in Cincinnati, there's a lot of folks that have, what do I want to say? They've adopted the fears of their ancestors.
Like people who have lived here.
Who have lived here before them, and it sort of just gets passed down. And that's not everybody, but I do see it in a lot of people where it's like, you don't want to leave the city for whatever reason, or you may have these what seem like lofty goals that go unachieved because you're like, well, no, my parents say this is too dangerous, or I should stay here, or whatever it is, or my friends even are kind of like boxed in, so it's safer to stay in that box.
Exactly, and especially if you don't have like a precedent for that. If nobody in your family ever leaves and lives somewhere else and then come back, you'll probably never leave and come back because there's nobody to look up to, you know, that has done that by example.
Right.
No, I hear you. And I think my family was the same way. They've never done that. So they're like, what do you think you doing? Why are you just getting up out of here and we stay here? And I'm like,
You just want to try.
I just want to try. I mean, if it goes wrong, I can just come back. It's not that deep, you know?
Exactly. That's so true.
Yeah.
What have you learned, though, having left Cincinnati in going off on your own?
It's really weird. Like, I think I had like that kind of epiphany when I went to New York the first time. It was like, I don't know. I feel like it was like, I haven't been there in so long, but like, I think going there and realize there's just more to the world, you know, like this, you know, like you just start to have like a global mindset instead of like one insular one where you're just stuck in the region. Like, there's just so much more going on out in the world beyond Cincinnati. Not dogging it, but like, I feel like I grew the most when I left and came back. I think something about going out in the world and hearing how other people think in different regions and then coming back here and comparing for what I was used to. I don't know. I feel like my mind just got really expanded. Yeah.
And has that influenced your art then?
Maybe a little, but I think it just influenced what my thought process of what's possible. So now things feel like tangible. You know, like you can pursue these things because you have an idea of like other people have done it before you.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now that the idea of leaving your hometown and growing a more expansive concept of life, has that helped you build community along the way?
I think so. I think something about like going to school out of state and then there's other people that are also out of state. We all have to stick together to make a new community. And I think after graduating, when I got out of school, I had that community because we all like kind of band together and stuck together and supported each other. So I think that's the most difficult part. I think that's what people fear is like that sense of community or infrastructure just dissolves when you leave. But like, you just got to put yourself out there. I mean, it's easy for me to say because I had school to like put myself out there and make connections. But that's why volunteering is good, you know, volunteering or joining like, you know, even institutions like this where like everybody comes together to make things. Like that's an easy way to like build a community when you move to a new place. So it takes a lot of labor and commitment and time. But like I don't know, it's worth it.
Right. But did it feel like, did you feel the labor when you were in the muck of it all? I'm sure it didn't feel like that. You were kind of just going and then things started falling into place.
I think the muck was like going to school.
Oh yeah.
That was the muck. I'm glad I'm not an undergrad anymore. I don't want to do that again.
Why do you say that?
It's just hard. It's like thinking about going back to high school. Like, you don't want to go do that again. You don't want to do that again.
What was like your experience though you studied art, right? Did you go to an art school?
Yeah, I went to an art school. I went to the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design.
What was that like?
It was actually enjoying myself. I had a pretty good time. I had a lot of art classes. What interests me the most was like having so many different types of art history courses. And then just, I don't know, it's really hard to describe.
Well, you went to high school at the School for Creative and Performing Arts, right? And I'm sure college was much different than that, but did it feel a little bit like you were, like you talked about expanding your mind, did it feel like stepping into an art university? Was that sort of like expanding on those concepts you may have gotten when you were in high school at a creative school?
I think so. Like they prepared us well to like leave. That was their intention, is for us to not settle and like go to these other places, because they would bring like art school like recruiters to our department and like show us, you know, what's possible that's outside of Cincinnati. And I remember one of my teachers, I was thinking about going to like the school here, our school here. But then she was like, why don't you just go somewhere else? Like, why are you just settling for hanging out here? You need to go expand your brain and try new things. So they knew from the jump, like, don't stick around, or at least go, leave and come back.
Absolutely. So that means you do think that there is value then in taking those big steps, like we just talked about.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, what would you tell like a young person who may be interested in something creative, but they just don't know where to go, like what their next step looks like? Maybe they don't have counselors or people coming into their schools to say, why don't you try this? What would you tell those young people?
Sure. I would actually, this is something I wish I did which was take advantage of like our art institutions that are here in town because sometimes they offer free educational programming.
Oh, wow.
Or it's like affordable. Like you just have to go talk to whoever runs the program and say like, hey, I want to join like this art class 101s on Saturdays. Can I hop in on this? Or like maybe there's a way to like subsidize it if they can't afford it. So I feel like I wish I would have done that. There was a lot of good shows at the CAC when I was in high school, and I look back at it now and I'm like, I'm kicking myself in the butt for not going there. So go to museums.
Go to the museums. Go to the ones in your city.
Yeah, go to the ones here. These are the ones that's where you start. This is like your training wheels.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you kind of did that. You over the summer you were an artist in residence for the Contemporary Arts Center, right? And you were teaching like arts classes, right, to youth, weren't you?
Yeah, and those were free.
Yeah,
and
right.
Come up. Yeah, it was wonderful. So I think I also have this weird, I don't know, I keep feeling like I'm being called back here to give back to things because I spent so much time like doing like artworks. I think that was a really good experience in doing murals and stuff where like I feel like I'll always have like some connection or some need to like come back and give something through like my own art making and then go back to where it was. I don't know. It's really weird. Like I feel like Rasheed Johnson said something similar to like once you get steady and you have what you have your foundation and your career all set, then you take your platform and give it to other people to rise them up above you. And I feel like that's very true. And I feel like that's why I like teaching sometimes too, is because I can give those things to other people. I'm still in the trenches too, but like, if somebody's deeper in the trenches, I want to help them come up a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think just being generous and not hoarding knowledge. I think that's something.
I like that. I definitely like that. So there is sort of a natural tether here. Because you are a Cincinnati native. So I do find it beautiful that you feel called back here. And I think the city needs you too. Yeah, for sure. Like you're so talented. And like you said, you left and grew all this insight. And now it is, whenever you can, it's time to like share what you've learned. Yeah. Especially to like the Black and brown inner city youth, because that's mostly the audience that you were like that program targeted, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's where we grew up too.
Right. Exactly.
We were part of the inner city youth. So
right.
I know. I don't know. I had a thought, but it disappeared.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sometimes thoughts be doing that.
They just be doing that.
They do. But that free resource or just like the more affordable resources, I do think are super important, especially for those kids that don't have the access to things.
Oh God.
Right.
That's so important because there are so many people that sort of I don't know, like things are sort of like glossed over, or for some people they do have these things just at their disposal just a little bit easier, and that's okay too. But there are young people that don't have so many outlets, and it is important to have like things like this, like Elements, or like the free programming with the CAC to reach those kids who need an outlet, a necessary outlet.
Right, exactly.
And then we can just give it to them rather than expecting them to go seek it on their own when they don't really know where to look.
Right. Well, also museums should also advertise in Black communities because they be tripping too.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street.
Definitely.
They need to do better and to let people know that they're there.
Absolutely.
But, I'm gonna leave
Absolutely.
it.
No, that's real though. 'Cause I just had a conversation for this panel thing, and we were talking about how Common, the rapper, came to Cincinnati. This wasn't his first time doing this, but I guess it just sort of like stayed with everybody just this time around. Or maybe I was just...
Was he giving like a lecture here?
He was performing. Yeah, he was performing at Music Hall with the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. Yeah, it was really great. Phenomenal performance.
It was crazy.
Yeah,
he started breakdancing.
He did a lot. Like he did his thing. Like for real, right? Like he usually does.
As he does.
But I think for so many people, maybe it was just because I was a part of the conversation this time. For so many older adults, this was something that really like touched their spirits, because our executive director, Damian Hoskins, the executive director for Elements, he talked about how for many years growing up here downtown as a person of color, he never felt like Music Hall was accessible to him.
Right.
and it was only times during like maybe once in a while for a field trip his school would go, but like it didn't feel like for him to have lived downtown and never feel like that was a place that he could access or felt like he had an identity or a voice or just a staple in the city where he's from that he felt like I could like claim. It's yours, right? Yeah. That's so profound.
Yeah.
So you're right. It is a two-way street for these institutions that have been here for years.
Especially if they're like county owned. Yeah. Y'all paying for this.
Exactly.
Like,
you're paying for this.
Right. Y'all better get in there.
Right. And we need to let our young people know, especially our people of color, let these young people know that these resources belong to them.
Right.
They're not exclusive to one group of people.
Right. There wouldn't be anything without us.
Exactly.
If people don't show up, then what is it?
Exactly. Right. You're absolutely right.
We should go plan an insurrection at the...
Okay, Noah. Here you go. Here you go.
Michael Jackson activism over there.
Michael Jackson activism. All I'm trying to say is that they don't really care about us.
All right, Michael.
But I think that's beautiful what you said. And I think the work that you do is beautiful. And the fact that you come back to the city and you tap in, you're not just coming back just to be like, I'm back. You're like actually tapping in. Because you don't have to do that. So I think it's beautiful. Yeah. But the work that you do now, you're a curator, right? Could you talk to us about that, what that role entails?
Yeah. So basically, I am the senior curator of 2 house museums. So there's 2 historic homes, because not Milwaukee, but Cincinnati's historic. I think there's some historic houses like the Taft Museum. It's basically like that, but there's 2 of them, and they're like about a couple blocks from one another. But I'm essentially responsible for putting work on the walls, connecting the community with the work, and just acknowledging like the land that which the museums are on, and like how like they connect to the lake and what their purpose is, and just making it more accessible, and then bringing, a variety of audiences in. So I'm like responsible for like making sure this is accessible for people to read and understand art and what they can, just making art relevant to their lives, so just adding relevance.
So in terms of putting art on the wall, what does that really look like for you? Do you actually go out and seek artists, or what did you do for that? Yeah.
So part of it's a lot of reading and just always keeping tabs on like art outlets and seeing like what's going on in the art world, like politically, because it's like a whole other ballpark. There's a lot of politics in art. It's ridiculous. But I also like build relationships with other artists. So me being an artist, I have a lot of people I know who are artists that I respect or look up to, and I would love to have conversations with them.
Absolutely.
So for example, there was one artist, her name is Hope Wang. She's actually from Cincinnati too, but she went to SAIC, but we ran into each other up there in Milwaukee, which is really weird. I keep running into people that are from down here up there. But yeah, we just had a studio visit with her in Chicago. She lives in Chicago. So like just being kind to people and like building relationships and not like letting them fall off the face of the earth is really important, and just going out in the world and seeing work as well in other places and seeing how other people do things, or how the other museums do things. That kind of informs like what kind of conversations our community needs, and how can we accentuate those conversations through like art making, because art has the power to tell history,
right?
And different narratives that you would never come across. So I don't know, it's a pretty big responsibility.
Right, it is. Yeah. It definitely is. It goes back to what we talked about of making sure the public knows what's going on, and that there's a resource here, and that there's art worth consuming that relates to your lives.
Right.
But I also think what you said about building those connections, that sounds like it's rooted in humanity, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah.
But when you're going out to make those connections, does it ever feel like you're like working to do that, or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think artists are just natural. Not everybody, but like, we're always wanting to connect with people who do similar things to you, or they do something different, and you just have like a cultural exchange, like kind of what we're having right now. We're swapping ideas. And I feel like those conversations happen naturally, and that's how you build a relationship. I don't go out and say like, hey, you're a famous artist, be my friend. Like, that's awful and really shallow. And you should also like you shouldn't do those things in order to like build a relationship, to use them for something else. Like, it's just really creepy.
Absolutely.
So I feel like genuine friendship is important. And plus, art making and putting it up on the walls is a collaborative experience.
Absolutely.
It's not insular. Like, people should be in conversation with the person who's putting the work up, or asking permission if this is okay to display this in this manner.
Yeah, because it's vulnerable too.
Yeah.
It's a vulnerable practice.
Right.
So you should trust or build the trust with the person that you're going to be working with, in conversation with, all those things.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
What's been the biggest challenge for you, though, when it comes to being a senior curator?
Definitely imposter syndrome, because like you don't hear of senior curators not having like a PhD, let alone a master's or whatever, vice versa, what I just said. So like having just been out of school for like 3 years and then I'm suddenly just doing this, it's like, can I handle this? This is really big, but I don't know. I have a really good support system and people who help build me up and fill in the gaps of where things I'm like not sure about. And people are very generous with their assistance and stuff. So I don't know. Community is really all you need. You can almost do anything in this world if you got the right people to like rely on, and also asking for help.
Yes.
I think that's a big thing too. I've been working on that because I've been very, not my stubbornness, my willpower makes me feel like that's like, I don't know, it's like a character flaw I have is asking for help. So I feel like I have to do everything myself all the time and be independent, but that's not the truth.
Why do you think that is? Where do you think that comes from?
I mean, it could be just been my own upbringing. My parents were very like, they were present. They were very present.
Yeah,
they were really good parents, but they also just let us be independent and not pry too much in our personal lives and stuff. They had a lot of trust in us. So I think something to do with that, and then just also being like a perfectionist as well, just kind of influences me not asking for help on things. So I don't know. It's just like not asking for help is like self-harm.
Absolutely. And on the other side of that, what do you think has been like, can you identify any triumphs you've had from being in this role as a senior curator?
Yeah. I mean, I opened my first exhibition that I solely curated. So I've only been there since like January. So I've been like cycling through inherited shows and things that my predecessor had put together. So, there's not really my voice. It's just something I'm pushing through the system. But finally, we have space for something that I did. And it opened in October.
Oh, dope. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On God.
Yeah. Thank you. And it was wonderful because it's a contemporary art exhibition with contemporary sculpture and artists that are like in the Midwest, which is important to lift our own region up, and then something about that has been drawing more younger people to the museum.
Nice.
Younger people are interested in coming, students are coming, other curators have come and saw it. So that's really good. But I'm not sure if those types of visitors or conversations were happening prior to I was being there. So that was like a success.
Yeah.
We're diversifying our audience and letting people know we're here and this art is for you.
Right.
It reflects what's going on in our world right now and the conversations that we're having.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Do you feel any sort of pressure after having like that kind of impact on the community? Like you said, there may not have been that kind of audience coming into the gallery prior to you putting on that show. What comes after this? Did you feel any sort of like,
I felt like before, like we were happy because I had like these grandiose ideas. I'm like, wow, contemporary art, it's so great. Everybody's gonna come see it, and then it worked, and I'm like, oh, okay.
What's the follow up now?
Right, what's the follow up? But I think it just energized me more that this is what we needed, and people are saying yes, we want more of this. So it was very validating. So we did something right as a team. We made a really good decision. So we just have to keep it up and keep building upon that.
Yeah. Is there any sort of testimony that someone may have shared with you about that exhibit that stayed with you?
I think people are happy that, so, when you go into museums, there's labels next to the work and it describes what's going on.
Right.
I just have this weird mission. It's not weird. I shouldn't say that. But I have this mission of making like art language like accessible to everyone to understand. Because like, if you're like an art academic, you can understand all the big words and all the critical theory things and isms. And, it's like nothing to like people who study it. But then people who are just like regular folks that just show up and want to look at art and understand it right away, that stuff isn't accessible. They don't know what art jargon is. And that's awful. So I kind of go in with the thought of like dissecting or like interpreting works so everybody understands what's going on and stepping back and explaining these different isms and terms and stuff so they can access it. And then they're able to have a conversation about it. So it's a lot more fruitful if like they have a conversation with their friend in the gallery because they know what's going on. on, and they're taking something away with them about it, and then they're able to like share that what they learned with the other people outside the museum who haven't seen the show. So it's like a trickle down, like it's just all about access.
That's powerful. And where does that come from? Where did that whole initiative for you, I guess on a personal level, where did that drive to want to break down some of those barriers that keep?
I think it was me, just my own experience in school, and like getting like, because it's just a part of art. You have to read like these you probably know too, like if you're like in a creative discipline, there's always like these jargony like essays and papers you gotta read, and they'd be like 60 pages or something crazy, and I get that and I'm like, I don't know what this means. Like I'm from the hood. I don't know what this means. That's a really weak excuse, but
right. But I get what you're saying.
It's a barrier,
though. Right? It is a barrier. It's a real barrier.
It's a language, a language that I didn't know. So I think that rage of like this being written for art theorists writing articles for their peers, but not for everybody to access. It's like code, So I'm like, let's break down the code so everybody can understand what's going on. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I think it's like my own personal agenda that I'm dealing with.
But that's how change happens, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your lived experience has informed how you want to present art to your community.
Right.
And that's like you talked about the jargon, that's just another way to limit people from coming into the door. So for you to break that down, you're just kind of like deconstructing the whole system essentially in those kinds of ways.
Right, exactly. And it's like all rooted in like white supremacy, not being allowed to read or to understand big things. So I don't know.
On God.
I'm trying to tear it up. I mean,
You really are.
On Black God.
On Black God, Black baby Jesus.
On Black Jesus.
Black baby Jesus.
On
That's
Yahweh.
real though. On what?
On Yahweh.
Yeah.
Oh
on Yahweh.
Y'all hoteps in here? Dang. Okay. I see
Stay
where I
woke.
am.
We was kings
We
and
was
queens.
kings. We were Israelites.
We the Lord's people.
Oh,
really
God.
We don't got to go to no art museum to
experience art and beauty.
get programmed trying to read that white supremacy code next to the art. We came here to enjoy that art, brother, sister.
No, speaking
my
on that,
God.
no, for real though, let's break that down because that's so true. And I know a lot of people that, from my own experience, when I've gone to an art exhibit with
that
people,
was a joke. He's
no,
like,
no,
yeah,
no,
but for
no,
real though.
there's something
But for
in
real,
there.
though.
There's something in there. When I've gone to art exhibits with people, like if I'm with company, a lot of times I've noticed, because I like to read things. So I'm very much that person that will stop at every
You're
single
a writer,
thing.
so you like reading other
But I'm
people's
like,
stuff.
I will stop at every little placard and I'm like reading every word before I move on. But for a lot of people, they will just go into a gallery and just move around. And everybody, that you can do and consume art however you want to consume art.
Right.
But do you think there's something lacking from the art experience or how you engage with the art when you don't stop and read like the text that goes alongside? Or do you feel like, because we talked about the jargon, maybe for some people they don't want to read it because it may be too long or the words are like I don't know what this means, or do I have to be an art major to understand these words? Do you feel like that takes away from how people engage with the work when they don't read?
Right. I think there's a lot of like missed opportunity to understand nuance in artists' work, because sometimes if you read those placards, it tells you where their ideas began and how they arrived to like this final product.
Right.
And then if you walk into the gallery and you don't understand what's being read, like you're just only getting the surface level value of that work, and you'll never know like what went into it. And that's what makes art kind of inaccessible. At least that's my opinion. Like I feel like writing and art go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
You know? So yeah, I mean, I think making language complicated so you can't access the deeper meanings of work, it's a disservice. It's
Now, considering you're in this artist realm, where I think of it as, like you talked about being an artist in residence at the Contemporary Art Center, and the art that you display, even the art that you create, goes up in gallery walls, right? We think of these things as like these historic institutions or just places where people go to consume art and like that's art. Like people point at this thing because it's in a gallery and it's like that's art. What do you say to those who are making art just on the street or like in their bedroom? Like, what do you think of that kind of like art making, and what place does that hold in the art universe, I guess, if I'm
like,
making sense?
I think I know what you're talking about, like self-taught art. It's like an entire genre, like folk art. It was like arts, technically, the people who didn't receive a formal education, but they're still makers and they make wonderful informed work. I think right now there is like the trend right now in the art world is like craft, like craft work, like craft making, like you making vessels and ceramics and textiles and woodworking, like all those things are in right now. And I feel like right now also that DIY spaces, DIY like exhibitions, people making art like in the middle of the street, like pop-ups and things. I feel like that's where the future is going and where art is becoming more accessible to the general public. And plus there's just been like a lot of like upheaval in like institutions being exclusive and just people are taking back their power. They're like reclaiming their agency to like decide what's art in their community instead of like an institution that's far removed from the experiences of the people who live in that neighborhood. So I feel like it's all valid. That's my opinion. I feel like it should be valued. And I think we're going in that direction where,
How do you think historic institutions, art institutions can empower the self-taught artist, the street artist?
That's a good question and a really big question too. I feel like making space for them in their institutions, you know, funding them. These people have money, you know, considering their work to be on the wall as well, you know, involving the community in the narrative of the institution is very important because like we said earlier, like they're nothing without us. You know, if we don't show up, then what is it?
Exactly.
So I feel like that ecosystem could be like nourished a bit more, what's the word? Like nurtured, you know?
I think you're right. I definitely think you're right. And like you said, the dollars count. That definitely is a step. But even going beyond that, just recognizing that what the self-taught artist does is of value is even more important than even just like offering funding. But that starts with stepping out of the building and onto the street, into the communities, and letting them know that the doors are open.
Right, exactly. And then like artists who were formerly trained, I mean, even myself, like we go out in the world and see people making art in the street, and that's inspiring. And you know, and those things are appropriated into like other artists' work that are on the wall. So like there's like a disconnect, but there's also no like ownership of that inspiration of being out in the world and absorbing things around you. So they're all just very interconnected, and I think it's just time to acknowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do want to ask you about any artist of any sort of genre or medium that have influenced your life.
Barack Obama. Michelle Obama.
Oh,
she's a writer, language arts.
Okay. Touche.
I think artists that have greatly influenced me is Kerry James Marshall.
Okay.
It's just interesting because like I learned how to like portray women in paintings through him, who is he's a man, so it's weird, but like just always making sure our figures have eye contact with the viewer, or they're always in control of how their body is positioned and they're not positioned in a way where they're being fetishized. That's really important. And recently, just another artist, I've been looking into Jason, I think his name is Jason Moran, but he's a musician who works with artists.
Oh, cool.
You know, and he like composes things or like looks at artist drawings and then like interprets them into like music, which is really cool. So that's the kind of the rabbit hole I'm going down right now of how to do that. So I've been looking to him as well, finding ways to make, you know, like interdisciplinary crossing over from art to like other modes of making is, you know, that's something I'm inspired by.
Awesome. I love that. And
I hate it.
Something that you said that stood out to me about understanding how to draw like the female figure in a way that isn't about fetishizing. To be a Black woman, what was that whole journey to get to that, to how you want to approach drawing women in your art?
Camille, it all stems from rage. just being fed up. Like, I remember I'd be in high school and then like creepy men would like try to like touch my legs out in public. Or I've had one time, this one guy, he like yanked my book bag back while I was walking downtown because I didn't say hi to him. So like my body had no power. They were stripping it.
Absolutely.
And they really tried to.
Absolutely.
So I think, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the actions I take and a lot of stances I have in my work come from me being upset about being mistreated in the past or being shut out from a conversation. So I don't know, something about personal experience is empowering to like make things better for other people around you and setting an example.
Absolutely. Rage comes from rage.
It comes from rage.
That's powerful right there. And I know a whole bunch of people can relate to that.
Oh yeah,
like, for real. Like I felt that when you said that. Oh, for real.
Rage is power.
Rage is power. And I had a professor in college that talked about don't necessarily try to like suppress your anger, but to use it. So it made me think of that when you said
what
that.
It is. Yeah. That's a good quote.
She's a great professor.
Notable quotables.
A lot of quotables. Yeah. But what's on the horizon for Phoenix, the artist?
Phoenix, the artist.
Rebirth.
My date of birth. You said my date of birth?
No, rebirth.
Oh, rebirth. Oh my god.
Phoenix.
What's funny is that I like astrology and stuff, so I literally have almost 0 fire elements in my chart. So my name is Phoenix, but I'm like all air and earth signs, so it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, this is besides the point. But I'm working towards a show in January up in Milwaukee that's going to open, like next year. But then after that, I kind of like just take opportunities as they come. So if I see something to apply to, I'll apply to it. I'm hoping to do a residency at some point, another one. I hope to like maybe go to a different state and then hang out there and make work and get to know the community there. So I feel like artists are nomadic, and I think I'm just trying to keep that practice of being kind of nomadic.
I love that. I love that. That's how I think you live. Like I really think you get like a big chunk out of life when you are comfortable with the idea of moving around and adapting and finding home in different places.
Yeah, exactly. Like you'll always have your hometown. It's not like they're just going to evaporate. You're not going to miss out on anything because if you stay in touch with them, then you're still involved. So like, just go see the world.
Right, go see the world. We live in a modern world. Right. You got technology. We got all kinds of stuff. Right. Yeah, you can stay tapped in.
Yeah, you can stay tapped in. Don't worry about it. Tap out. Right.
Tap out. That's the real challenge you got to face nowadays. Right. But that's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, thank you. So much.
That was weird.
It
just never changed.
It never changed. That's it. That's a wrap.
Don't you
go anywhere.
We talked about this, Camille. We make a paper airplane and then throw it at the.
Throw it at the.
No, make a